Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required. Subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
Welcome into the Sports Memo NFL Every Game on the Board podcast with our first guest up, Teddy Covers, NFL expert. Teddy Covers, welcome into the podcast. How are you, Teddy?
Hey, great to be here, Drew.
Great to have you. 60% NFL, 58% since 2015, and we got a coupon code, a good one, TCPLAY. That's TCPLAY at checkout for any of Teddy Covers' plays. That's tonight's play. He's in action on Thursday night. We got Saturday NFL, Sunday NFL, and college football bowls, plus college basketball and NBA. Any of those plays up at sportsmemo.com for just $9 using coupon code TCPLAY. Any singled out play from Teddy Covers. Teddy, any quick thoughts on tonight's Thursday night action?
Well, yeah, I'm in action on the game. Weather could affect this contest. We're seeing expected to rain at least 4 periods of the game. There's supposed to be a decent wind tonight at Arrowhead. And, of course, you have the Thursday night road teams who have struggled consistently this season and in recent seasons in the NFL, facing the team off an overtime game playing on Thursday night in Kansas City, who also, that's another track record of, I think it's even worse than the Thursday night team's track record when it comes to teams coming off the overtime affairs playing on Thursday night. So, like I said, I am involved. You can get the play right now at sportsmemo.com.
All right, Teddy. We got 303-304 Houston at the New York Jets. This is the Saturday game, the earlier one. We got Houston laying 7. There is a 6.5 out there at BetOnline. 41.5 the total, Teddy.
Yeah, this just got steamed up this morning within the last hour. We're sitting at 6s, and now we're seeing 6.5s and 7s. And there are plenty of 6.5s out there, both in Las Vegas and offshore. It is a split line right now. That's because it's been moving in the last hour. And the markets, don't tend to you don't see every book land on the same number, even in the NFL, right after you've seen a major market move and a big steam play like we've seen on the Texans over the course, here on Thursday morning. Of course, they're getting the Jets off a very rare victory. As New York was pretty much badly outplayed for extended stretches of the game at Buffalo and found a way to win it in the fourth quarter. A real positive sign for Todd Bowles and the Jets. Of course, when you have what is expected to be a lame duck head coach late in the season, those aren't teams that tend to draw significant betting market attention, especially when they're coming off an upset win on the road, and now they're stepping up in class, and they're facing a Texans team that didn't play well last week against Indy, Texans team that certainly has much more potential than this Jet squad. I mean, there's no question Houston's is going to be road chalk here, and significant road chalk, but it is worth noting that Jets offense worked with Sam Darnold behind center last week. Took a little while to find some rhythm. By the fourth quarter, Jets are moving the ball up and down the field. When you have a Robbie Anderson and you have a Quincy Enunwa, who, he's been outrated out for Saturday, that it bodes well for New York. When the Jets offense hasn't had Darnold, Anderson, and Enunwa on the field this season, they've been as weak as any offense in football. And of course, Isaiah Crowell, the running back, may not be able to shoot up here either. So significant concerns for the Jets from the injury front, concerns for the Jets when it comes to the ability to self-motivate against a non-divisional foe coming off a win. I can certainly understand all the money that's come in on the Texans, although if you're betting them, don't lay 7. For God's sakes, don't lay 7. Find a 6.5 right now, because that number may not be there.
Teddy, we got the late game on Saturday, 305-306 Cleveland at Denver, 45 or 45.5 the total, seeing pretty much 2.5 across the board. That's Denver laying at home.
Yeah, sure. We're seeing a lot of support for the Browns right now in the market, and you can understand why. All right, if you've seen Cleveland play in recent weeks, and it's been basically the last month since Freddie Kitchens took over as offense coordinator, they found a little bit of rhythm, but a big win over Atlanta, big win against Cincinnati, They had the road loss at Houston, but even in that game, we saw Baker Mayfield throw for close to 400 yards net, and the turnovers did them in. But it wasn't the Browns stinking up the joint. The offense moved. And, of course, last week, the win over Carolina. Baker Mayfield's on a roll right now. He's completed, 76% of his passes during this 4-game span, throwing touchdowns. And with the exception of that first half against Houston, he's avoided the mistakes. I'm not surprised at all that we're seeing Cleveland Browns money, a significant Cleveland Browns money. It's a banged-up Broncos team that in many ways has overachieved this season. You know, they had that nice little winning streak where they beat the Redskins and they beat the Titans and they beat the they had a nice little winning streak when they beat the Redskins. Where the frick did it go? When they beat the Chargers and the Steelers and the Bengals back to back. Thank you. Jeez, I was scrolling down too far and looking at another team. My apologies. But the first 2 wins in that were fraudulent, in games where they were outplayed against superior foes and stole it against the Chargers and the Steelers. And the Bengals is nothing. Last week they played San Fran and came out flat as a pancake. But I'm worried about the injuries for Denver. I really am. The passing game, the Broncos can win given these 2 circumstances. If the offense they're playing isn't executing, doesn't put the ball in the end zone, Broncos can win. Equally important, Denver has to be able to run the football. Case Keenum's not winning games for the Broncos. In the passing game, with that has traded or lost most of their top talent. Cortland Sutton was a number 4 receiver coming into the season. He's number 1 receiver right now for Denver. That passing game's not going to win contests. They have to run the football with Philip Lindsay and company, and luckily Cleveland's defense, luckily for the Broncos anyway, Cleveland's defense has been vulnerable to the run. And I do worry about the Browns, who are not a mature team yet. We saw it. They had a couple of big wins. They went on the road, and they got annihilated in the first half at Houston just 2 weeks ago. I worry about that for the Browns here, coming off a win, playing a team that they think that they can beat, and you worry about the mistakes. You worry about a team that is not mentally mature in these short, again, it's a short turnaround with travel for Cleveland, these short turnaround environments. And, of course, the money has been heavy on the Browns. 3.5, no problem with Cleveland. 3, you can make a case. The 3s are gone. And a 2.5/2, I'm not all that interested in the Cleveland side in this one at Denver on Saturday night.
Teddy, moving on to the Sunday slate, we got 307, 308, Miami at Minnesota, 44.5 the total. Minnesota laying 7s with some juice, or 7.5 at home. This is an interesting spot for Miami, Teddy. Big win for you, hitting that season over-under win ticket with the Dolphins. I believe you're, 4-0 on the season. But in this particular spot, I mean, it's arguably the biggest win in franchise history. How do you think the Dolphins regroup here?
Oh, no, it was the biggest win in franchise history. They beat the Patriots 4 times in the last 5 years.
No, that was worded incorrectly. The way they won was one of the biggest moments in franchise history.
Absolutely. And now, again, it's 3 straight covers for Miami, 2 straight wins. The win over Buffalo, in which they were badly outplayed and stole it, and the win over New England, in which the offense did enough, but, they were on the lucky side, obviously, to steal that one, which keeps them in the playoff contention. But make no mistake about it, my powering numbers, which I'm pretty confident in at this time of the year, Miami's the single weakest playoff contender. There's no question. And I know they're better with Tannehill and all of that. And I know that Miami's playmakers have stood up. But I also saw this team go into the cold at Green Bay less than a month ago. They were plus 12 in that game. They lost by 19. That's the same Packers team that lost outright to Arizona their next home game. Miami was not competitive there. So you have a Dolphins team that's coming off a huge win and another huge win, back-to-back wins over divisional foes. And I know every game's super important. This is a tough spot for Miami. The question is if Minnesota is good enough to do anything about it. Because, again, this Vikings team, and they fired John DeFilippo as their offensive coordinator. It did not work for whatever reason. But I don't necessarily think that DeFilippo was the wrong answer here. DeFilippo was the biggest part of the problem. But, you scored 10 against New England, of course, 7 against Seattle. And, of course, the 7 came in garbage time. They were shut out for all of that game while it was meaningful. You have a quarterback who's taken multiple sacks, each of the last 4 weeks, and throwing interceptions as a result of the pressure that he's under. You have an offensive line that's not blocking. You have a running game that's not working, and you have a defense that hasn't been able to get the key stop when they needed it most, coming off a game in which they gave up more than 200 yards on the ground after giving up $160 on the ground against New England. So if you're taking Minnesota here, you're taking the leap of faith that the Vikings team can bounce back off these debacles. But how many games have they won by more than a touchdown this year? Not that many. Certainly not that many of late. That being said, if I'm playing, I'm laying. Miami is not a bet-on team this week, and certainly not with significant travel and significant weather to deal with against a Vikings team that even after the Monday night loss and even with the short week, Vikings are still completely live to be in the playoffs. In fact, they're still the number 6 seed right now, ahead of Carolina, Philly, Washington, and Green Bay. So I don't see the Vikings laying down just because they got slapped around the last couple of weeks. It may well be a step-up spot for Minnesota as much as it is a bet-against spot for the Miami Dolphins.
Guys, Teddy's in action tonight in the NBA. Lakers vs. Rockets ticket. Also Chiefs-Chargers Thursday night football. And his New Mexico Bowl winner 5% bowl game going on Saturday. You can get each of those games for just $9 using the coupon code TCPLAY. That's TCPLAY at checkout on sportsmemo.com. Moving down the line here, we got 309-310 Oakland at Cincinnati. Teddy, 46 the total. Looks like Cincy laying 3 at home.
Yeah, pick your poison here. The Raiders coming off a win. The Raiders haven't won back-to-back games since last year. They've covered 3-point spreads their last 13 on the road. It's a Raiders team playing a West Coast team traveling east for an early start game, and Oakland has not been good in that particular role. And boy, that was a big win last week for the Raiders. I do not trust Oakland to do it again after knocking off Pittsburgh. And the week before, remember, they gave Kansas City everything they could handle. The week before that, they gave Baltimore a much tougher game than the final score would indicate. There were 2 non-offensive scores for the Ravens that turned that game from a 3-point decision into a 17-point decision. And prior to that, they won straight up at Arizona. So you look at this little stretch for Oakland over the last 4 games, notably better. Okay. That being said, Carr's still under pressure. He's been sacked 8, 4, 4, 1, 3, and 4 his last the 6 games. So the pressure's been there every game. The running game for Oakland, 55 yards last week. They're not getting it done on the ground. And, of course, defensively, the Raiders are what they are, which is a team that has the weakest pass rush and the fewest turnovers forced. And not the fewest turnovers forced. I'm sorry, that's San Francisco. But a team that doesn't generate pass rush and doesn't create turnovers on a regular basis by any stretch of the imagination. Not even fumbles. So it's hard for me to make a case for Oakland. And then again, you want to lay points with Cincinnati? We know it's a lost season for the Bengals. They haven't won since they beat Tampa. They didn't cover that game at 3.5 back in October. 5 straight losses since that time. And the last win by more than a field goal was the first week of October. So I understand that Cincy played hard last week, and I give him credit for that. And we saw this last year down the stretch from Marvin Lewis's squad. 4-2 ATS their last 6 in 2016, 4-2 ATS their last 6 2017. Both years they were a non-playoff team. I don't know that Lewis keeps his job after this season, but I know that the Bengals haven't quit on him. All that being said, since he's a tough team for me to lay points with, I have no interest in this game whatsoever.
Teddy, another 10 a.m. Pacific kick here. Tampa Bay at Baltimore, 46.5 the total. Looks like 7.5 the Baltimore Ravens laying at home.
Yeah, I've got some great stats. I got some great stats here. Looking at just the last 5 weeks. All right, take out all this full season numbers. Over the last 5 weeks, the Bucs are the number 4 offense and number 13 defense. They're not a bottom feeder. What's going to amaze you is a couple games down. I don't know. Do we get to the Lions Bills?
Yeah, we can do Lions-Bills.
I'm just asking. If we get to that game, the stat on that game is going to blow you away when it comes to just the last 5 weeks. But certainly we look at this Tampa team and say, wow, the effort level has been there. The offense has stopped turning the ball over. The defense has played better. And this is a lot of points for a Ravens team coming off a frustrating overtime loss. Lamar Jackson's officially their starter right now, but Lamar Jackson's not chucking the ball downfield on a regular basis. It's a limited passing game right now for Baltimore. And you say, this number looks a little bit high given all of those issues. And then you start reading the quotes. And you say, that's why I'm not playing on Tampa Bay. This week in the markets there's been a market move towards the Bucs. You look at the stats, you're going to end up on Tampa in this game. I don't think there's any question. But the way the Bucs went down against the Saints, remember, they had New Orleans. They were up double digits. They had them on the ropes. And then there was one miscue, a blocked punt. And next thing you know, it was like it's the same Tampa team that's fallen apart all year. They took a punch and they didn't respond well to it. And that definitely worries me for a bad team with a potential lame duck head coach on the road late in the season. I worry that Tampa has a glass chin. Because, again, stats say Bucs. Mentality, I'm not sure how much fight Tampa still has left in the tank.
Teddy, couple left here, 313, 314. Dallas at Indianapolis, 47 the total. Looks like Indy laying 3 at home.
Yeah, hot. Dallas, another team. You look at the recent stats. Last 5 weeks, Dallas number 3 in terms of offensive yardage per game. Number 8 in terms of defensive yardage. I mean, these are pure yardage stats. So they're not, but top 10 in both categories. And certainly when you're talking about a team that has attracted a pretty big betting bandwagon over the course of the last month, that would be Dallas now. With 5 consecutive wins and covers, 3 of them coming as underdogs. The 2 times they were favored against Washington, they got there by a missed extra point. Against Philly, I thank you very much, Dallas. And again, people are saying, Dallas was so the wrong side in that game. They had the cover twice in the last 5 minutes, and the defense couldn't hold it. And they got the cover again in overtime because they didn't kick the field goal. Thank you. I appreciate it. You'll get a Christmas card from me this year, Jason Garrett. But the bottom line is, it wasn't a right side for Dallas. Neither was the game against they've not been a team to lay with. They've certainly been a team to take points with. But coming off, look at the games they played. The Thursday night Thanksgiving game against the Redskins, and the Thursday night huge matchup against New Orleans where they pulled the upset, and then the big game against Philadelphia in which they win in overtime. And now off the OT win, off the divisional wins, off the 5-game winning streak, they got to travel to Indy. It's a flat spot. The markets are clearly reacting to that for Dallas. And when you look at the Colts, not an easy team to step in front of right now. I mean, Andrew Luck has been great. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, Andrew Luck, he's been really good. The running game hasn't worked for Indy each of the last 2 weeks. They got shut down in Indy, and Marlon Mack couldn't get anything going against Houston. And without any running game, off to a slow start and boom, trailing on the road, Andrew Luck is just like bing, bang, boom, bop, bop, marking that offense up and down the field against an elite defense. And once he found his rhythm, it was drive after drive. I thought a brilliant game from Luck, who has been really good this year and continues to avoid sacks. 7 of them since September for Andrew Luck. And, Dallas's defense was cracked a little bit last week by Philly, and I don't like the spot here for Dallas. I can understand why the money has come on the Indianapolis Colts.
Teddy, the last game we're going to be doing, the aforementioned Detroit Lions versus Buffalo Bills, 39-40. Seeing the total, depending where you're shopping, with 2 or 2.5 out there in the marketplace. That's the Buffalo Bills laying at home.
So yards per game differential, last 5 weeks, that's between what you gain on offense and what you allow on defense. Dallas is number 3. Chargers are 4. The Ravens are 2. The Steelers are 5. Number 1, all of those playoff contending teams, obviously. Number 1 on that list is the Buffalo frickin' Bills. They've outgained their opponents by 151 yards a game over the last 5 weeks. They're number 6 in yards on offense. They're number 1 in yards on defense. And, of course, during this span, has Buffalo made money? No. They haven't been big. Yeah, they're 2-3 against the spread over that 5-game span. They lost outright as a favorite last. And then, again, they dominated the Jets for extended stretches last week. But they turned the ball over and didn't didn't score touchdowns. Hence, Jets and coming back in the fourth quarter and Sam Darnold leaving them down the field for the game-winning drive. The Bills were the better team there. The Bills are the better of these two teams now. I can understand why they're favored in this ballgame. I mean, Detroit, last week winning and covering on a pick 6 from Darius Slay, who can do that sort of thing, and maybe he baits the rookie QB into making mistakes here. But a Lions defense, another defense, by the way, that's gotten a lot better in recent weeks compared to where they were in September and even October. And by better, I mean now they're middle of the pack instead of a bottom-tier unit. I lost with the Bills last week. I'm tempted with them again here. I think Buffalo is the better of these two teams. All right, Teddy, anything else you want to throw out NFL-wise before we shut this down? Oh, gosh, there's so much. I mean, who's our long shot future of the week? And I haven't even looked. I meant to look to see what the Packers were. I think I talked about that on Monday. At 5-7-1, if you can find like a real long shot ticket on the Packers to do something, someone that's priced them as a non-contender. Green Bay's live to slip into the number 6 seed if they can keep winning. If they can steal this game at Chicago on Saturday, maybe look at the Packers for a long shot. This is not a load up on. This is a long shot future. If it hits, maybe get a nice little payday. That Bears defense looked good on Sunday night, though. You still like Aaron Rodgers and company, even without the 6 here? This is what I'm saying, okay? And number one, John DeFilippo is fired, and Kirk Cousins is not Aaron Rodgers. All right, let's make that very clear from the get-go. But the concept here is there is room in the NFC for a long shot to come in and make some noise. And we know how good the Saints are. We know how good the Rams are and all the high-profile teams. And Seattle's gotten buzz and Dallas has gotten buzz. And there's room for that number 6 seed. If you can find a team with an elite quarterback like Aaron Rodgers and say, hey, to win the NFC, can I find a 40 or 50 to 1 on the Packers right now? If you can, that's worth something, in my opinion. All right, I like where your head's at, Teddy. And guys, he knows his NFL 60% year-to-date, 58% since 2015. Got a bunch on the slate this weekend. He's got his NFL play tonight. Sunday card coming out, Saturday 5%, New Mexico Bowl, NBA plus college basketball as well, and you can get any of those plays, each of them for just $9 using TCPLAY as the coupon code at checkout. Guys, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be right back with Andrew McGinnis to finish off the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast.
Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.